Hello and welcome to episode 358 of the Crate and Crowbar, a PC gaming podcast being recorded on the 2nd of February. No, it isn't. It's nowhere near the 2nd of February. It's the 17th of February, 2021. I'm Marsh Davis. I'm joined this evening by Tom Francis.
Hello.
Graham Smith.
Hello.
And Tom Senior.
Hello also.
It's been Video Games Christmas. Is it Video Games Christmas? Games Journalism Christmas is what we call it. The IGF. Although it feels slightly less Christmassy than it has done in previous years, because the IGF used to present desperate games journalists with just a bounty of indie games, more than they could possibly play. But of course, every day produces a bounty of indie games, more than you could possibly play now. But nonetheless, you have located some delightful gems within the IGF's spread. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, well, delightful might be too strong or inappropriate for the game that I want to talk about, but it's still really exciting for me because partly because there's a bunch of stuff in it that is not currently out that I've been looking forward to, but also because you get to discuss it with the other judges, and the other judges are just game developers, games journalists, people in the industry. And something happens when what you're discussing is whether this game is worth an award or not. That really focuses the discussion on the actual merits and the kind of nuts and bolts, and is it really, when you come down to it, really good, and less on tangents and sort of broader issues and other stuff. So that discussion is always one of my favorite bits of it, is just reading what people really think of a game, like when they really sit down and think, is this worth an award? Like what factors are important to them then, and which things disqualify a game and which things make it good but not award worthy, which things make it something they really want to celebrate. So I love being part of that discussion. And the way it works is that you can't they must have had a bunch of freeloaders. I don't think this has ever been me, because I always have rated, every time I've done it, I've rated at least my fair share of games. But of course, the way it used to work was as soon as you're a judge and you're in the back end, you could just download any of these games. And so probably some people were just going out and getting what they wanted and not judging any of the games they've been assigned. And so all the popular stuff gets all the attention, and the unpopular stuff, things people haven't heard of already, doesn't get any eyes on it at all, positive or negative. And so it's harder for it to get an award that way. And so now you have to rate your assigned, I think 3 of your assigned games before you can rate anything that you're not assigned, which is good. And that's actually one of the things I like about it, is you're pushed to play things you don't normally. So like Outer Wilds is an example of a game that I'd never heard of before the IGF. I wasn't assigned it, but the discussion around it was so it just broke out from that. Like, if you're looking at the discussion feed, you just see everyone's talking about the Outer Wilds and raving about it. And so that was a really nice example of that thing happening organically. The game I played that I liked in my this time that I was assigned was it's called House, which is not a very helpful title. And the trailer, if I'd seen this on Steam, I would not have been interested in it, because it's a very low-res pixel art horror game. And the trailer has a very kind of ooh, look how gruesome this is, look how nasty it is, look at this person being disemboweled, look at this horrible, freaky monster thing. And it's very much trying to sort of shock you and really go all out, turn everything to 11. And I played it, and it's you're a little girl in your bedroom. You wake up, and as soon as you start moving, the movement is kind of horribly slow and wildly over animated. Like, you have a really enthusiastic walking animation, but you're going nowhere. And so it feels really sluggish to play. It's very arbitrary what you can and can't interact with, and I wasn't feeling like this is going to be of interest to me at all. And came out of my bedroom, walked down the corridor. There's like a mysterious door you can't open. There's another door to your sister's room. You can talk to her for a bit. You go into the kitchen. My mum is making some sandwiches there. I open the fridge. There's a glass jug of milk in the fridge, and I can pick that up, so I take that. And then I notice the verb when you're holding that is throw. So sorry. This one is spill. So I just randomly sort of walk over to my mum and spill milk on the ground. And a few seconds later, my mum turns around, slips on the milk, and just smashes her face into the floor and dies.
Oh my God.
I'm just like, what? I just did that on a whim. That was just like me fucking around, and I didn't think it was going to have any actual consequences. And yeah, it's not entirely a simulation, but it's a Groundhog Day thing. So basically, when you all your members of family are, not only can you kill them, but they are very likely to die. They are sort of on course to die in almost like a Final Destination kind of way, where like there's little accidents waiting to happen all over the house, and the pitch for the game says the house is trying to kill your family. But each time, basically, as your family get killed, they come back as ghosts, or other weird parts of the house start to come alive and haunt you and attack you. You can't really fight back, so you're dead at that point. That's kind of the end of your run. And then you just wake up in bed again. And I think the only thing that ever changes permanently is your journal. You write some new journal entries, which have not been at all useful to me. It's not like Outer Wilds in that respect. It's mostly just a thing that's the same every time. But as you play it, you learn what you need to do to kind of prevent these things. So it turns out the reason I was, completely sort of, I don't know, impressed, flawed, horrified that there had been such a specific reaction to the thing I'd done, because I thought it felt like a very me thing to have done. It's like, there's no reason for me to do that. I was just fucking around to see what would happen. And as it turns out, if you don't spill milk that makes your mum slip, there's actually a flood, like a drip leak coming from your roof that's causing a pool of water elsewhere in the kitchen. And if you don't kill her first, then she will naturally walk over past this slippery patch and fall and die. So that's kind of her fate that you're trying to avert. I had accidentally caused it much earlier. But there's, just to give you an example, the solution to that is there's a bucket somewhere else in the house, and you put the bucket under the drip, and then the drip is no longer a pool that she can slip on, and so she'll make it to the table at least. And
did you trip over the bucket and slam into the table?
No, I mean, like in the way it's depicted, she just walks right through it and she's fine. My headcanon is that she sees the bucket and steps around it rather than stepping directly on the wet floor, because you haven't dried the floor. Like the leak that's already happened is still there. But anyway, the systems are fairly clear. But there's a bunch of other stuff, like there's a bowling ball that you can pick up, which its main use seems to be that when you drop it, the room kind of shakes a bit. And in some rooms, that's a useful thing. There's a reason you might want it to shake a couple of times. And so the bowling ball is the item you want to bring if you need to have that effect. But actually, if you slip, like that pool of milk, if I sprint over it, I also slip. And the pool that of water in the kitchen, if I sprint over that, I slip. And when you slip, you fall. And when you fall in your ass, that shakes the house as well. And so anything that's set up to respond to the bowling ball can also respond to that. And so it does have this slightly systemic approach. It's a bit Hitman-y. It's a bit kind of it's kind of like reverse Hitman. Everyone's going to die, and you're trying to stop it. And yeah, it's I like that aspect of it, and that made me get way more into it than I expected to, because it wasn't just figuring out what did the designer mean for you to do here. I think ultimately that probably the only way to save all your family is to do some specific set of actions that the designer has intended, but it's got enough wiggle room there that, like, okay, this item can be used for that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it's for. Like, it actually might be better to leave that where it is and go get something else. Yeah, it's just all the deaths are incredibly gruesome in a way that, like I say, in the trailer that was really off-putting. In game, it's kind of hit a bit different because it's usually funny. Like, I mean, the killing my mum thing, it was so out of the blue, and so the result of my actions of me fucking around, I kind of had to laugh. It was just like so completely disproportionate, and all of the deaths are really like heightened and exaggerated. Someone just gets a chandelier dropped on them, and it sort of crushes them. It crushes the piano they're playing, and then the piano also sets fire. And then there's a surprising amount of variance in like how you end up dying, because you pretty much, well, unless you get yourself killed but through some calamity, then you will get killed by a ghost, basically. Something somebody you've allowed to die is going to come back and kill you, or in my case, directly killed. So like there's a general like shadowy specter thing that often picks me up and tears me in half, like just pulls me apart in two pieces very easily, and then just drops the pieces. That's my most common cause of death. There's a rug that comes to life and it chases you, and it's still a rug, like on the ground. It doesn't coil up or anything, but if it gets underneath you, then spikes come out of the rug. And I've also been killed. So that bowling ball, like I say, you drop it to shake the room, and I've used that sometimes to wake up the cat. There's a reason you might want the cat to wake up. And as you start to iterate on this and you start to go through the motions of the first few things you've solved that you need to do, I was doing that drop a lot. And one time I was just a bit too close to the cat when I dropped the bowling ball, so it just crushed the cat.
Oh God!
And on that run, a few minutes later, the ghost of the cat comes back, and as soon as it gets near me, just sort of jumps on me and claws my face off.
Quite
which is
right.
Fair. So yeah, it's surprisingly diverting. I'm a little bit stuck on it now, and I don't know if I'm going to push through. I might look up a walkthrough to what I've got to do next, because I can't figure out how to save my sister. And I did it once, and I don't know why she didn't die that time. So I'm not sure what I've got to do to progress. But yeah, I got a surprising amount of value out of it.
That sounds fucking great. A cool idea.
Yeah, like horror Groundhog Day is not a thing. I guess, actually, I suppose that is a thing. Like, there's Happy Death Day, right? Has anyone seen that movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a girl who's sort of fated to die on her birthday and keeps... But actually, that's a murder. Like, she's being murdered by somebody. It's not like she... it's not like Final Destination where, like, fate is coming for you. It's a specific guy is killing her.
I mean, it's kind of part of the plot of Groundhog Day as well, because he does end up saving a bunch of people who are... there's a little kid that's going to fall from a tree. There's a guy that's going to choke to death.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff.
I feel like he's doing that for bonus points in that film. But I mean, he's not a particularly nice guy in Groundhog Day. He's very selfish, and he just wants to kind of get out of his situation and get the girl at the end. So all the stuff he's doing, it's just purely sort of, all this altruism is purely surely to stroke his own ego. That's my theory about Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
I mean, this is getting into just a Groundhog Day podcast. I think that's how it starts out. But I think over the course of the film, he learns to eventually do these things for the correct reasons.
See, I don't think so. Well, so not because I watched it like a couple of years ago, and I was really surprised that I remember it so fondly, and I thought it was going to hold up, and I didn't think it did, because he ultimately is just learning the best way to manipulate the woman into liking him and just doing whatever it takes to make her like him. And there's a run through where he is honest. He just does the right thing and just tells her, look, I'm in this loop and everything, and just completely bears his heart to her. And it doesn't work. It doesn't get him in bed with her. So he doesn't do that. So he goes back to lying to her and just gets better at lying to her.
Have you guys seen Palm Springs?
I've not.
No.
It's a film with a very similar conceit, but I think it deals with a lot of the moral issues much more adeptly. It's really funny, and I found it incredibly sweet as well.
Ooh,
you should watch it.
Recording the next film telly podcast tomorrow night, in fact. So that should be up in next month or 2 months or 6 months or who knows.
As well as playing reverse Hitman, Tom, you've also been playing reverse Hitman. Hitman.
360 Hitman.
I can't believe they didn't go with that title. Yes, Hitman 3, the seventh game in the series. Naturally. Oh, no, sorry, I think it's the 8th, actually, isn't it? Because there was Blood Money was 4, Absolution was 5, and then there's been 3 of these, so that's 8.
I don't think my title was that silly in this light.
Well, they've snuck a title in there, haven't they? Do you see this? It's now the World of Assassination trilogy. These 3, which I don't think. I mean, they used to use World of Assassination as like a tagline for the first one, but I don't think they've been calling it that like a trilogy until now. But it is nice to have any name at all that we can use that doesn't just directly mean a previous game in the series as well. Because Hitman 3 was Contracts originally. Like that was the third Hitman game. Anyway, this one is the episode... Well, no, it's not episodic anymore. It's the World of Assassination 3. And these 3 games are very similar. They are very much like they figured out a format and then they're just making new levels in that format. And the twists are very slight. And I would say one of the big things in Hitman 3 that they've improved on is they've finally figured out a way to sort of scratch their storytelling itch without ruining the sandbox side of things, because a tension they've always had with these games is what we want as players is we just want a bunch of assassinations. We just want to kill the people. And like that, I always want the objective to be to kill one or more people, and that's it. But they want to tell a story, and I guess grudgingly, I'll admit there are some players who want that, but they seem way more fixated on it than I want them to be. And so there's always been missions where, like in Sapienza, the classic example is you've got to kill these two people, but there's also like a sample in a lab, and you've got to destroy the sample in the lab for some story reason that I don't remember and don't care about. And it's just a pain in the ass every time you replay it to have to go and do that extra thing. It's not fun. It's not, it's not assassination, and the whole game is set up to be good at giving you lots of ways to assassinate people. And this time they've got a new system for that, where the first time you play a mission, it's different to when you replay it. So in some cases, there's just a kind of an intro bit that you don't have to play in subsequent playthroughs because there's immediately a different starting location you can choose. In some cases, there's a very similar example to Sapienza where there's kind of a thing you've got to do in a lab. And the first time through, you do have to do it. On subsequent replays, you don't. It's an optional objective. So it's just about taking out the targets. And there's even one where on your first time through, you don't know who the targets are. There's a story reason for you not to know that. And there's loads of them. There's 10 targets on that level. I think you've only got to kill 5 of them. And when you replay that, you just do know who they are. And that's way better because you don't want to have to do that investigation process over and over again. So yeah, they got way smarter about that, and that's really cool. The thing, I feel like there's 2 phases to my enjoyment of Hitman in this World of Assassination trilogy. Is the first one is discovering the level. You play it, without any real hopes of doing well, without really trying to worry about silent assassin. Just explore. You watch where the targets go. You maybe try one of the mission stories where they sort of lead you into some particular opportunity, see where that leads you. And in doing that, you check off a bunch of challenges. And I find that really satisfying. Like the mission stories thing, I wasn't sold on at first, but the challenges just sort of being subtly told, like, there's a way to kill this person with an exploding golf ball, or, there's a way to hit both targets at once with a chandelier. I love that kind of stuff. And it's very satisfying to figure out how to do it and check it off and just, see your completion increasing. And by doing that, you unlock new starting locations, which then gives you better access and quicker ways to get to the fun stuff you want to play around with. And then once you've kind of mastered it in that way, I don't think I was always into this, but at some point I got into actually competing on the leaderboards with my friends for Silent Assassin runs. So the leaderboards, Silent Assassin is where you only kill the targets. No one sees you do anything suspicious. No one finds any bodies, and you're never recorded on camera, and you don't kill anybody except the targets. And if you want to place well on the leaderboards, you pretty much have to do that because there's a huge penalty for violating any of those conditions. And then if you succeed on all those conditions, then all that matters is how quickly you did it, and that will be your score. And it's been really fun to just develop rivalries with friends on the leaderboards and figure out better and better ways to do it, because it has very much that Zachtronics thing. If you've ever got into competing on like Opus Magnum for like the most efficient cycles for something, where if somebody beats you by a little bit, you're like, let's go back and look at my method and see, is there like one little tweak I can make to eke out another little bit of efficiency? And I guess a Hitman, like shave off 10 seconds, 20 seconds or something. And then someone beats you by 3 minutes. You're just like, whoa, hang on a minute. What the hell are they doing? Because they're not doing what I'm doing. There's no way to make my method that good. And that's always really fun, where you have to go back to the drawing board and think, okay, my whole approach here is wrong, and I've got to go back and think about something. Matt Castle reviewed it, I think, and so by the time the game came out, he already had really good times on like almost every level. There's only one level where he had a time where I thought I can probably beat that, and so I did that one first. And I think Matt and Sam Roberts and Phil were all very hot on Dubai because that's the first mission, and they're all getting very good scores. And I just felt intimidated by that and just went on and did everything except Dubai. I think I got a time under 10 minutes on Dubai and thought, okay, that's decent. And then everyone was down to like 4 minutes. And so I went on to the rest of the game. And the other night, I finally went back to Dubai and thought, okay, let's figure this out. I actually accidentally spoiled myself on what method they were using. And so I kind of wasn't really interested in doing that method, partly because it wasn't my invention, and also partly because I figured they've been honing that already, so I'm not going to do better than them at their own game. And yeah, just by that time, it also unlocked a bunch of new starting locations, so I had to think about what opportunities those give you, and just paid a lot more attention to like, where are the targets when the mission starts. And I figured out a new route that is faster than theirs. Ha! And I'm now slightly ahead of them. And there's a strangely like warm sense of well-being and accomplishment and worthiness that I killed people faster than my friends. Now my friends have to feel bad.
Is this your favourite of the worlds of assassination so far, then?
I don't know. It's really hard to judge because I do like that thing they've done to make them more replayable. But I was trying to make a list. Everyone's doing their lists of the best Hitman missions over the whole trilogy, and there's no one level in this that I really love. All of them are kind of a bit of a mixed bag. I think Mendoza is probably the standout, and that's a big like winery in Argentina, and it's a really beautiful building, and it's just very expansive and lush and gorgeous to kind of explore and walk around. But ultimately, I don't really think the methods in that level are as fun or as satisfying as others. And so Sapienza is still my favorite level in the whole series, I think, which is from the first game. And yeah, it's very much, it's kind of like if you have a favorite band who are just incredibly consistent and just do the same kind of music each time, they're not really developing, then your favorite album is just really going to come down to like, oh, there's 3 of my favorite songs on this one and only 2 of my favorite songs on this one, so I guess this one's the best. Like, that's about it. So it's tough to choose. Probably, I think the first one probably has the most really great levels. Sapienza and Hokkaido are both really, really great. But yeah, there's not much in it really. They're all just very, very consistent, and they've really like explored this style now thoroughly. I did have one really fun moment on that Mendoza mission, the winery, because it also made me appreciate how fucking difficult it must be to make these games, because these mission stories and opportunities are all they're just out there for you to trigger, and once you trigger them, these people who are sort of on clockwork routines are going to deviate from those routines, and that's going to mess with the rest of the simulation. And so I was trying to do 2 different things at once. I was just exploring, as an exploring phase. I'm just trying to get every challenge, check off every challenge, do every mission story, try everything. And I had there's an achievement for like electrocuting 2 people at the same time, which I was pretty sure I could do if I made use of this other opportunity, which is to flood the main factory floor with wine. There's a way to mess with the pumps. They just tell you this in the challenges, that like there's a way to do that. And I was exploring a different opportunity where you can take a tour of the winery. So if you dress up as this person who's supposed to be on this tour, you can take a tour with one of your targets as the other one of the other guests on the tour. And I was all ready to do that, and they're waiting for me at the entrance, but they won't start the tour till I go and sort of say I'm ready. But just as I was about to do it, I thought, oh shit, actually, if I want to electrocute the target in wine, I should flood the wine floor now. And so I went off and did the whole thing of dressing up as, a maintenance guy and finding the right wrench or crowbar or whatever, and distracting everybody so I could mess with the valves, and then flooded the whole place with wine. And it's like, there's a lot of electrocution opportunities in Hitman where it's like, you turn on a hose and there's like a little bit of water on the ground. And so technically if some electricity hits it, then everyone gets electrocuted. This is like, you are wading through it. It's like almost up to your knees. It really floods the floor, and like it's got great like, ripples and reflections and stuff on the wine. It's a real fucking flood. And then I did that and then went back to the start of the tour and said, okay, I'm ready. And the guy you're with, 2 women in like very plush evening wear, like long gowns, and I was dressed in a suit, and the tour guide just takes us through the whole factory floor, and we're just wading through the wine. Like, he doesn't acknowledge it in any way. Just walking up to the Greek press and stuff like, oh yes, here's how these work, and if you look over here, you can do this. I tried the electrocution thing. It was very easy to do, and it checked off the challenge, but it's a terrible way to do the assassination because you kill everyone else. It kills like 12 people. And that ended up being secondary. I just did it, checked off the achievement, then reloaded my save, carried on with the tour, wading through all this wine as the guy talks us through. And then he takes you up to the barreling room for a complimentary wine tasting where you sort of, there's a lot of veiled threats from Ian Hitman, and a lot of chatter that can be read more than one way, and the person's being very nice and hospitable to you. And as you taste the wine, and then finally, he says, okay, and that officially ends our tour. And the moment he finishes saying that, he just sprints out of the room back to the factory floor. And in the background, I hear him yelling, just, "Oh my God, the whole supply, our entire year's produce, I'm fired, I'm ruined, my life is over." And so you can kind of feel like these two different systems where there was a prioritization system there. Obviously, like the tour thing takes priority over the react to the flooded floor thing. But I also just like imagining that this guy has incredible self-restraint. Like when he's giving a tour, he is giving the damn tour, and he doesn't care what the hell else is going on. Until the tour is finished, I cannot deal with any other problems. And the moment it's over, his whole world falls apart.
This description has encouraged me to Google, does wine conduct electricity? And according to the first page of Google, wine conducts electricity better than water. So it's,
wow.
It's a good murder device in this context.
Full marks to Hitman for total realism there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they researched it thoroughly.
Have you been playing anything else, Tom?
Yes, but I feel like someone else should speak.
I, of course, meant Tom Senior.
Oh,
See?
Cunning.
Retrospective segue there.
I've been playing, I don't know how to pronounce this, Bezier or Bezier, which is a twin-stick shooter created by Philip Back and friends that actually came out in 2016 originally on Steam. I only encountered it recently because it's very recently released on Switch. And I've been really enjoying this. My new bath game. People want to know what that means. It's just a game I play in the bath. You go back a few podcasts, you'll know. And it's basically, it's a twin-stick shooter in the mold of, it's gone out of my head. The really famous Xbox Live Arcade one.
Geometry Wars.
Geometry Wars, that's the one, exactly. I think so the Bezier curve is a way of denoting curves using computer language, and that kind of describes the motion of both you as a player and also all of the enemies that try to swarm you, all of which have different behaviors. But there's also a kind of like underlying story to the game that is quoted to you in text at the bottom of the screen that you're far too busy to ever read because you're being swarmed by shapes that want to kill you. And the reason I really like this game is that it has like it does have a personality of its own, which speaks to the fact that most of it was created by one guy. It's got an amazing soundtrack created by some talented musicians as well. But I just wanted to read some sort of like tutorial descriptions, which are excellent. So at the end of each section, as you kind of go through a kind of little maze of choices, you can go left or right after each section, and it puts you to a different self-contained arena, basically, with its own makeup of enemies and shields that you have to destroy before the great villain Domus comes to claim your soul. And Domus comes after a time limit, and you have to destroy all the shields before Domus gets there in order to avoid him and get to the next section. But it's described in the tutorial text. Domus is a wrong-un, a proper Burke. Stay away from him until he becomes vulnerable in the final zone, then unleash hell onto his stupid face. And there's just kind of nice voice to the whole game. So your health pool is called Ouch, and you have a resource called Oomph. And Oomph, if you have maximum Oomph, I think it deals more critical hits, or it makes your blasters more powerful. It's got a really, really cool upgrade system where you've got a linear series of upgrades listed across the bottom of the screen, and each time you destroy a shield or get a really good streak on a bunch of enemies, you get to pick up a little star that kind of moves you along that track, and that encourages you. It's a kind of like a bit of gamesmanship where you can wait and just go further along the track for more powerful upgrades, or you can settle to just upgrade your blasters and just become more powerful at defeating basic enemies. And a great thing that I think should probably be a feature of this genre is it's got auto aim that you can use, which is kind of an antithesis. Like, these games pride themselves on being really, really difficult, and they look really difficult, and it's visually spectacular. There's lots of noise on the screen, and along with the music, that's part of the appeal. But you can just hold down the auto aim button, and actually it delivers a series of bolts that are more powerful than your basic attack at the nearest enemy. But it sets it overheats your ship if you use it too much. So you can you have to back off and then use your normal blasters that come back and use your auto aim again. And But I find that to be a really nice mechanic because it sort of opens up this genre to people who just want to have a casual fun time and just sort of listen to music and watch things explode and then use auto aim. It's a perfectly valid way to play the game. It's just to use auto aim, back off, let it recharge, then use it again if you want to. It struck me as like a really smart kind of full of personality. Apparently there's deep lore behind it. I can't detect it. But each time you go left or right based on your arena choice, it gives you like a mysterious message, and I'm sure there's deciphering to be done for lore nerds there as well. I like this because my experience with shoot 'em ups, with shmups or whatever, like the most revered one I've played is Ikaruga, but it's completely different genre really. First of all, it's not twin stick. You're not in like actually. It's not like Asteroids where you're just moving around and constantly aiming your blasters in a different direction. Ikaruga is also a game about trial and error and learning the mission, and then also combining that with like incredible twitch control to be able to actually get to the end. It's really unforgiving. It's incredible for what it is, and it's got a wonderful system where you flip between different flavors of blaster and shield to actually absorb certain attacks and return them as missiles. But something like Bezier seems like a good game for the moment, especially if you're looking for like a podcast game, which is a sad thing to say because the soundtrack is excellent. I think it's just it's the thing that's made me happy this week, basically.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah, simple game.
It's a really nice game. I did play it when it came out for PC ages ago, and I did find it quite difficult. But maybe I just wasn't making use of the auto aim to good effect.
Some of the rules are kind of almost intentionally obtuse. Like, so the shields that you have to destroy in each level, there's a different mechanism, a different way of destroying them. So it's sort of semi-randomly generated. I don't want to spoil how to get rid of some of them, but some of them you can just go up and shoot them and they'll blow up. But for others, you have to occupy specific zones or kill certain enemies before you are able to attack the shield, and it gives you no indication of how to do that. And it's also kind of some enemies you destroy and they create like pools or spaces on the map that if you go into, you're affected by negative effects, like you're slowed down or you can't shoot. But then for some other scenarios, there are zones where you have to go into them to deal damage to certain things, and so the only way you can do that is guesswork and just experimenting. I think that it's the reason I don't completely hate that, even though on paper like it is kind of I hate trial and error normally, is because each run is so quick and you could just quickly get right back into it, and it's so immediate and immediately fun because it's so tactile and all the explosions are beautiful. That it says there's innate pleasure in just simply cruising around destroying stuff even before you get to that challenge again, and eventually you figure it out and then you feel like you've unlocked some sort of deep mystery of the universe. Even though maybe some people won't question the game design of like showing you one particular type of presentation that hurts you and then very similar presentation that helps you, and how is a player supposed to distinguish without actually just dying repeatedly to find out.
Philip Back is a very nice man as well.
I was trying to like follow up on what like he's made since then. Apparently this took like about 8 years to make, and it is brilliant. I really and that kind of shows so the comedy in the kind of tutorial text where he says like you go to the advanced bit and you talk about score tips. Bezier's scoring system evolved over 5 years and uses around 30 different variables to calculate. I don't remember most of them.
Oh, God.
Method matters. A blaster will score more than a special. Proximity matters. A shorter distance will score higher. But he also says, for a joke, I added a score boost based on the music volume. I don't remember if I took it out. There's just such a lovely personality to the game, especially for a game like this that is so just kind of wordless most of the time. You know, these games are often just purely about the audiovisual, being attacked by this audiovisual experience, and to have this kind of underlying sense of humor to it, I really delighted me.
Is the scoring system like in your mind when you're playing, Tom? Like, it sounds like if it's that complicated, it's hard for the player to have a model of what they should and shouldn't do to get the best score.
Yeah, so it's pretty clear about the basics of it as getting streaks and keeping your attack streak up, and then using a combination of normal attack, auto attack, and specials to kind of keep your chain going and going and going. Especially when you understand the rhythm of the waves and how they operate. Like as soon as you enter a new area, you're assaulted by a huge wave of enemies, which teaches you what's going to be around for the rest of that particular section. But it's also a chance to get loads of scores up, and then you get to carry those scores to the shields when they appear. So yeah, the basics are there. Like, it teaches you the basics for getting good scores, but it's also linked up to global leaderboards, local player leaderboards on your friend lists. So you can always compare yourself against the best of the best, and people get like, literally trillions of points. I was like, how? And also another thing is that when you each time you beat the game, you level up your whole account thing, and as you level up, you unlocks new enemies and new enemy behavior. And so enemies that might have formerly charged you might be more cautious or evasive, or they might have new missile attacks and that kind of thing. So I was initially disappointed because I completed the game very quickly. But actually, the more you complete it, the more the game changes, the harder it gets. And now I'm just obsessed with it. So I'm just going to play it. I could play it so much just to see. I want to see all the enemy types. And it goes to you at the bottom right of the screen on the menu when you enter the game. It tells you what percentage of the game you've seen. And I'm at 25%. And I've completed it loads of times. So there's definitely loads of secrets locked away in there. Like, it depends on the order of whether you go left or right. I'm sure there's loads of stuff to find and discover. And I refuse to go on any wikis for it. I'm determined to discover it for myself. There's so much there. It's great. And it's something that looks so frivolous. It looks like you can immediately play and enjoy, but has all this stuff behind it that you kind of, ooh, there's something here. Ooh, this is nice. A lot to get stuck into.
It's so nice that it's being given a sort of second lease of life on Switch. It's
perfect as well for Switch. Like, I was playing on the little screen earlier, and it was absolutely spot on. Runs beautifully as well. So yeah, it's a great handheld recommendation, and it's great on the PCs, of course, as well.
I looked it up while you were talking about it, and Philip Back's company's called 9 Games. And like, the website sort of suggests that their intent is that they're going to make 9 games over the course of the company, because there's like a numbered list down the side, 1 to 9, and number 1 is Bezier, and then the next 8 numbers are just blank.
Oh my god!
Like, it's 8 years each time. Then it's going to be a generation spanning endeavor. But yeah, I mean, after this, I'd love to play what they've got cooking next. Just a lovely game. Really like it.
That's awesome.
We've been playing Marsh.
Well, actually, I've been playing something. The way you were talking about how much personality there is in Bezier made me think of this. I've been playing Death Crown.
Ooh,
which is fun to say. It's been out for fucking ages. It's been out since 2019. And I don't quite know why it hasn't become substantially more famous just for the way it looks. Because it has this sort of it's a tower defense / offense game, I should say, but it has this really striking monochromatic pixel art style. It's really sort of baroque and focused on sort of like fabulary occultism, but it's depicted in this kind of really harsh 1-bit style, pixel art style, and that somehow makes it feel really fervid and nightmarish. And it has this really raunching off-kilter soundtrack by some Russian electronica musician called Lightning, and it just conjures up this atmosphere of just demented sickness as you play Death herself, who is out to punish the mortals. And you punish the mortals via a series of hex-based battles, of course.
That'll show.
Exactly. You build up your base in real time, and you send legions of the undead to tear down your opponents. And it's incredibly pared down and fast-paced. You only have like 3 components. You have mines, which produce all the money that's required to put up buildings. And you have crypts, from which your undead army emerges at intervals and traipses across the map to attack your enemies, and forts, which shoot incoming enemies. And that's it. They're just those 3 components. And your opponent has the equivalent. You know, it's translated to mortal equivalents like windmills and barracks, but they're the same kind of mechanical things. And sort of at first it feels like the difficulty is simply about sort of clicking on your base in a maximally efficient way, just getting your economy running as quickly as your finger can click. But then it begins to sort of throw other considerations at you. So for one thing, the area in which you can build on these hexes expands only when you put forts and crypts down. And it allows you to build then in adjacent squares. But mines don't do that. So if you're not careful, by placing a mine in sort of like a choke point in the environment, you can actually prevent yourself from building out your base any further. And then the enemy has all these sort of tricks that it starts deploying. Like there's a giant fucking floating cube on one level that sort of lasers you if you build anything too close to it. And the map becomes this sort of puzzle about how you can expand sufficiently to become a threat when it's got this kind of area of effect, sort of area denial laser beam. And then there's another one where this giant eye apparates over your hexes and eventually claims them for the enemy. I have no idea what's going on the level. I did not understand that mechanic at all. But the game it sort of doesn't really matter that much. Like the game is this really messy, sort of rough and ready in some areas, and like some of its ideas just appear and then disappear like that. The giant floating eye is just introduced and then discarded almost immediately. But it doesn't really matter. It's just sort of fast, crunchy. Doesn't need to be neat and tidy or like polite and polished. It's just really idiosyncratic, and it has this powerful identity to it. I guess like Bezier does, really. And it's, I don't know, I feel like looking at a lot of the Steam storefront of late, that there are a lot of games which are perfectly good games, and they're all very well focus tested and metriced out the ass, and but also just somehow completely divorced of any alluring identity. And then something like this comes on, and it's not like a perfect piece of game design at all, but it just has like 1,000 times the character of nearly any other game. And honestly, I find that much more appealing. Just, tell me something new, do something new and different and weird. It doesn't even matter if I like it. You can be obnoxious and objectionable, but as long as you are different and interesting, that's actually more important to me. I
just want to feel something.
Well, I want to feel that something's being created with real intent and personality, because that's an act of communication from the creator to me. And I think a lot of the things where the edges have been beveled off, there's no communication. There's no kind of intent to project something that the creator knows to me. They're just telling me things I already know, showing me things I already like. And that's just, and eventually you just stop feeling stimulated by that, I think. Anyway, it's great. It's under £10. I think it's got co-op as well, but I haven't played with that. And multiplayer, but I haven't played with that either. It might just be split screen, but yeah, pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I played this cool. A while back, and again, I was also drawn in by the art style, and I also love got a real soft spot for like simplified strategy games, anything that can kind of, just because most strategy games, I'm just never gonna learn them. It's just too much work to learn how to play, and you only find out if you like it after you've done that work, and often it's like, oh, I don't like this now. I know how to play it. And so I love stuff like this was really easy to dip into, and quick to learn. I remember I didn't stick with it, and I'm trying to remember exactly why. It was something to do with those, you're mentioning these special mechanics on each level, and it's often like a way the enemy can screw you over. I think it was one of those. It might have even been the eye thing you're talking about. I think I started a level and just like the enemy was just stealing my tiles without me knowing how they were doing it or what I could do about it. And I was just like, nope, all right, I'm done.
Yeah, it doesn't communicate at all what that mechanic's about is the main problem. And it doesn't suggest any ways in which you can obviate it. I think I just did it by luck in the end, but I don't understand quite what levers I was pulling to achieve victory.
Yeah, I wonder if they could surface that stuff more, sort of like, you kind of choose what mission you want to do, and for each choice you're told what the threat is going to be, and what the mechanics and logic of it are. So you're taking on that challenge intentionally.
Yeah, I mean, it's got, like I say, the rough edges. Part of that is the sort of level select. It doesn't really tell you what the levels are about in advance, I assume that the developer's first language isn't English, because a lot of the tutorial text and stuff is quite difficult to parse. Yeah, worth a punt. Can I just mention that I've been playing The Room 4, Old Sins as well, which is a sort of puzzle box escape room, much like the preceding games in the series, which I think, Tom Senior, you've talked about in the podcast before.
I can't remember which ones I've played. Have I played 4? Is that brand new? I'm not sure I played it.
It's brand new to PC. I think it was on an i platform of some point. But or maybe it was VR. I don't know. Anyway, it's not VR anymore. It's great. I don't have anything new to say about it, apart from to acknowledge how beautifully crafted the series is, and it just has some of the nicest in-game objects of any video game I think I've played. I'm a big rotator of objects in games.
I've always said that about
you. I just love rotating an art asset. I think probably my favorite part of the Uncharted series was being able to pick up fucking jade figurines and just looking at the light maps. And in the room games, you not only get to rotate them, but you get to poke and pull and twist them too. And sometimes they pop open, and there's an anatomical model's eyeball inside, or the rotor blade for a miniature submarine or something. And you go away somewhere else, you could plug that in somewhere else, and that becomes like a nice little contraption you can manipulate as well, and so forth. Anyway, it's wonderful stuff. Anyway, the one thing that really pleased me in Old Sins was this engraved model roof. It's just really nicely designed object. The puzzle aspect of it isn't particularly complex or confounding, but it's just really nicely implemented, and makes you sort of think about the imagery that's on the roof panels in a way which tricks you into feeling like you're halfway intelligent, when in fact you're probably just adult. But I really like those games.
The Room 4 is different from the Room VR, but you would like the VR game if you like rotating things, and if you like the Room, it works just as well in VR, if not better, being able to use your actual hands to paw around the world and rotate things and pull little levers and switches. It's extremely satisfying. There's a segue from the last game you were talking about, Death Crown, because Tom mentioned simplified strategy games. Because speaking of simplified strategy games, we've been playing Slipways.
Yeah.
Do you want to set this up, or shall I do the intro? You've played it more than I have.
Yes, but I've also talked a lot, and I'm also curious how you would describe it.
Okay, so I only played the demo of this for...
Oh.
Hello?
I can't hear Graham. Can
No, I can't hear Graham. Graham just got out.
What the heck happened?
Oh, I heard a bit of you. I'm seeing you muted, Graham.
I keep pressing the button to unmute myself, and it keeps re-muting me.
What?
I accidentally clicked your mute button, which I didn't know I could do. I was trying to mute myself, and then I was trying to unclick it, and I can't unclick it. I can't unclick it. But then when you clicked it, I clicked it, and then anyway, I'm sorry.
This should all stay in.
I say, shut up, Graham. You talk too much this podcast.
That's enough out of you.
I don't know at what point I got muted, but Slipways is, I would describe it as a puzzle 4X game, at least for the amount that I played of it. So I played a few hours of the demo when it was available during the Steam Games Festival, but it's a science fiction game set on a map with a bunch of planets in which you are mainly forming trade routes between those planets. Every planet has a resource that it produces and a resource or a set of resources that it needs. You then draw the titular slipways between those different planets in order to, say, get a planet that's producing people to send those people to a planet that needs people, and eventually satisfy all the needs of your various planets. And there's a kind of like that kind of core feels like a puzzle game to me, and for the 3 to 4 hours I was playing, that's what I was mostly focused on, because I was still learning its systems. Because there's a bunch of rules, like slipways can't overlap with one another, so the slipways you place down can then block your route between some planets being able to reach other planets. There's also like a range limit on how long your slipways can be, and so I spent a lot of time. I put it up the demo just mostly out of curiosity, and most demos I play during the game festival, I last about 15 minutes and then I uninstall them. Even if they're perfectly fine, I'm just sampling different things. Whereas Slipways just completely consumed my entire evening, me hunched over my computer, peering at this little map, trying to work out how to perfectly set up these trade routes, and it's pitched as like on the Steam store description as, hey, this is a grand strategy game you can play in 60 minutes or less. I think I did 2 games of it over the course of over 3 hours, so that's like the kind of pace I was going at. But it really is like a grand strategy 4X game, because it has all these other things going on around that puzzle mechanic. So when you first start the game, you choose 3 aliens to form like your council. They're not all aliens, are they? Like 3 different species to form your council, and they have different needs that form little quests or like missions or certain tasks that you can perform for them that then helps you unlock things. Because then there's also like a big tech tree element where you're trying to get scientific research in order to get technology that allows you to do things like build longer slipways or slipways which can overlap with other slipways and that sort of stuff. And so there's all this other stuff going on. I didn't play it for long enough to really get into that stuff, even though it seems like that's a huge portion of the game. So, like, I know previously, before this was this incredibly beautiful, polished Steam release, this was like a Pico 8 game. And Tom, you've played that as well as playing the demo, right?
Yeah, I played that a lot, and I was really into it. And so I've been very excited about this game for a long time because like alongside Teardown, really, these are like 2 games that I was very, very sure were going to be great. And Slipways, I had all the information I could possibly need to make that call, because I played basically the fundamentals in a Pico 8 version. And it's amazing it works in Pico 8 at all, because like you say, it's a grand strategy game in a sense. It's a big galactic empire you're building, and in Pico 8 it's fixed resolution. You can't zoom out or anything, so you can only see like 4 planets on screen at once. And that was ultimately the only reason I stopped playing it was just that it became frustrating not be able to like see an overview of what I was doing. And so I've been very excited to be able to play that game but be able to zoom out for ages. And this it has also consumed me. The tech stuff is really interesting, because I think like I said, it's very puzzly, and the game in general. And what I find it harder, it has these like sticking points, and one of them is the start of the game, because you are trying to create little loops of planets that can all kind of feed each other. So, if you can find one that it needs people and it produces iron because it's a mine, and then you have another one that it needs iron and it can produce wheat, and then another one that it needs wheat and it can produce people. If you link those 3 in a triangle, then they all supply each other perfectly, and that's a really good thing. Like, they'll all be happy. They can all then develop from there. But an interesting choice they've made is that you don't, like, if you didn't have that 3rd planet and you just had the one that needs people and makes iron, the one that needs iron and makes wheat, you can do that. Like, you can link them, and the one that needs people to make iron, it will still send the iron. It will just be unhappy because it doesn't have any people. And so when it's not quite as simple as like these are factories that convert one thing into another. They can produce the thing they can produce regardless of whether they get anything supplied to them. It's just that they'll be unhappy at that point. And that's a real like devil's bargain, because it tempts you into, you're looking at this randomly generated map. In the demo, it's fixed because they don't want you to be able to generate infinite maps. But you look at them, the idea is, the point is that they're not designed, so they're not neatly laid out such that these planets will tessellate perfectly. It's very much this raw chaos that you're trying to examine each one and think, okay, this one needs people, but it also needs genes. And I don't know where I get genes from. Are there any planets that can produce genes? Well, this one could, but only if it gets robots. Is there anyone that can produce robots? Well, this one can produce robots, but only if it gets iron. Is there anyone that produces iron? And you go on these daisy chains of logic before you've even done anything, just trying to figure out, if I do this, am I going to be able to get myself out of the mess I've created? And so that can be a sticking point, and it's quite taxing to kind of figure your way out. But like I say, you don't have to ensure everyone is supplied. You can get away a little bit with just having, like, if just one of these planets isn't getting what it needs, as long as it's on the edge of my empire, it's possible that by colonizing that, it will reveal more of the map, and I'll find something out there that can supply it. And that is always a very strong temptation. And sometimes it works out great. Like, often I think that is the right move, but sometimes you just get this cursed thing where, like, that I assumed I'd be able to get iron to this planet, and I just can't. And because the slipways can't cross each other, after you've built up a certain amount around it, you realize I can never do this now. Like, and even if my slipways are double range, I can't get them into this planet. But you can keep telling yourself, because of those technologies that these factions provide you. There's one that can create hyperspace lanes that are like slipways that can cross through other slip lanes. And so you're like, well, if I get hyperspace lanes, then I'll eventually be able to solve this problem. And then later on, you realize like, oh no, it's also too far out of range. Well, actually, there's relays too. So if I could research the relays, like someday or down the line, I'm going to research relays, and then I'll eventually be able to make this unhappy planet happy. And the unhappy planets, the way the score works is all of your accomplishments, the prosperity of your planets and the size of your empire and everything, all of it gets multiplied by your overall empire happiness. So if you have 100% happiness, then you keep all of your score. If you have 90% happiness, you're losing 10% of your score. If you have 126% happiness, then you're gaining. But the way that happiness works is, I think every increase in happiness is just a fixed amount. So if you make a planet prosperous or whatever, you get 2% more happiness. Now you're at 102, great. But if a planet's unhappy, you're losing 1% happiness every year forever. And so you'll just bleed happiness that you can never really get back. Like you'll never, for every point you lost there, making that planet happy eventually, it's not going to recover that. It's not like you'll gain 1 happiness every year. You'll always have lost that happiness that you lost. So the longer you leave your empire in that fragile state, the more damage you're doing long term to your final score. And you only ever have 25 years to do this, which is, it's hard to convey. Like Graham says, it's sort of like 2 games in 3 hours is pretty normal. I think I've got faster. I played it about 6 times in the weekend that it was available, and I typically like an hour now, because most of your time is thinking time, because you're just sitting there thinking, how do I get this set up? And then of course, once you do set up a stable loop like that, your next thought is like, how do I expand from here? And you don't want to mess with the good thing you've got going. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew, and then have this horrible messy appendage to your empire that can't ever satisfy itself. That sounded more colorful than I meant it.
Was that turn limit, like the 25 years, was that there in the Pico 8 version as well?
I think so, yeah.
It's interesting.
It's that plus the technologies, like the scoring system plus the technologies, actually makes it there are more different viable routes than I realized, because I mentioned these slipways that can cross each other, and there's relays, which are like you get to build something in space wherever you want it. That's super powerful, because you can now have a slipway go around a planet by taking a detour, and you're getting double the range, because they have very limited range normally. But if there's a relay there, then obviously you can reach twice as far. And then you can upgrade those relays so that their slipstreams can cross through any other slipstream, and that's insanely powerful. But it's a late game tech. You've got to get the relays, then you've got to upgrade them. I think you might have to upgrade them twice. And there are tech tiers. You can't even reach the relay tier at first. And so if you want to get that, you've got to really focus on science. And then you're probably going to get it in like year 23 of 25. So you've got like 2 years to fix all your shit with this amazing tech you've just got. And maybe then they'll be happy. But if they've been bleeding happiness this whole time, it's probably not going to pay off. You're not going to gain this like incredible amount of score that's going to compensate for the multiplier you're suffering. And so I was doing that every game. And science is a tricky thing to specialize in too. And I was sort of thinking of it as a criticism of the game. Like, I think this is this strategy always. You always want this. This tech is so powerful. It solves all your problems. It's like the whole game is so constrained. You're always fighting these. Oh, can I do this? No, I can't, because it can't cross this. Oh, you can't do that because it's out of range. Oh, this one can't feed that one. And then there's this magic tech like alluring you that if you had this, all those problems go away. Every single restriction you have can be violated with this thing. But you're going to get it right at the last minute. And so the last game I played before the demo ended was I had the tree guys on my council, and the tree guys are all about happiness and sort of self-sufficiency. So one of their techs lets you remove any food requirements from any of your planets. So this planet turns food into people. Well, now it just makes people. And that's really useful, because then it takes one link out of the chain. Now you don't need that other planet that was going to supply it with wheat food. And I ended up I kept telling myself I was going to get that relay tech to solve some of my unhappy planets. I'd left myself with a really nasty unhappy planet in the middle of my empire that I could just never get anything to unless I could cross slipstreams. And I was always working towards relays. And then at every juncture, there was a tech from the tree guys that was like, actually, that sounds really good. Like, this one lets me turn any source of water or biomass into food. And that's not a thing I build on planets. It's a thing I can build in space. And so that means I'm effectively like building my own planet at that point. Or to look at it another way, it's like a relay. And so I can use that to turn, have 3 times as many sources of food as I currently have. And then there's another tech where if you colonize a ocean planet or an Earth-like planet or a jungle planet, you have a new option of what to build there, because you set each planet can only have a certain number of different things it could become, and you choose which one of those is most useful to you. And these very lush planets have a lot of options. And one of the tree guy techs is to make a haven world, which means all it needs is food, and it's just going to produce happiness. So this is one of the few ways you can. I think it continually accumulates happiness. And I already had the tech that can turn like water or biomass into food. And I've also got a load of food planets. So now I've got 3 kinds of planets that if any of them can connect to these haven worlds, these lush worlds that can become haven worlds, then those are just happiness factories for me. And because the thing that turns those other 2 sources of resources into food is itself a kind of relay, it can extend the range and the how easily I can connect these planets to it. I actually could do that in loads of places. I managed to make like 5 haven worlds really fast. And then the next tech I could get, like I got that instead of relays, and relays are the things I was going to get that I could then upgrade to hyperspace. And I was still kind of telling myself, I'll get those next, I'll get relays next, and then I'll get the hyperspace thing, and then I'll solve my unhappiness problem. And then the next tech I could get was like, well, this one just turns people into happiness. They're called like ascension gates, I think. And I think you just send your people into the next realm or something. And so you just like connect a people planet to this gate that you built in space, and it just makes happiness. And I was like, fuck, if my problem is happiness, that's my best solution. So I just built loads of those, and I left my bad planets just sitting there unhappy, bleeding happiness the whole time. And at the end of that game, that was my best score I ever got. So it isn't as simple as like this tech that helps you violate the rules is always the best one. There's actually other routes to victory.
I'm really excited to hear that, because it's almost something like a card game to it. It's something Slay the Spire like, about the fact that you're building this machine out of your empire, and then you can maximize it in that way by making a bunch of kind of risky decisions or seemingly poor decisions, gambling that it's going to pay off further down the line with these massive technological boosts to your empire that cancel it out. It's also like it's one of the biggest glow ups of any game I've ever seen. Like there are other instances of Pico 8 games that have then gone on to be, complete packages. Celeste most famously, but Celeste's, although it's a fantastic 2D platformer, it's a 2D platformer. Whereas this has gone from Pico 8 pixel art graphics, where as you said, you can only see 4 planets on screen at a time, to just utterly gorgeous 3D universe where you can zoom in to every planet, and there's all these different kinds of planets, and as you zoom into them, you get this beautiful like thum, thum,
I love that noise so much
of your ships blasting down the slipways. And like there's a scouting mechanic, so that when you first start out, you can't see the planets that are in the universe. You just get kind of shadow orbs that might represent a planet or might represent nothing at all, and then you throw out probes in order to discover areas, but you throw out the probes almost like throwing rocks into a pond, and that you throw them out and then they cast a ripple, and then the ripples hit the planets and reveal them in this kind of like shimmering effect of into whatever kind of planet they are. Like absolutely every little interaction, every little graphical thing like that has been polished to something quite divine.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I was really sad when the demo, because I only played it on the night before the festival ended. So I played it for like 4 hours and was like, wow, this is amazing. I want to play loads more of this. And then they took it away, and now I can't play it anymore.
Yeah, it's cruel, the Steam Festival.
Yeah, I suppose that means the demo did its job, because if they had continued to, I completely understand it. I think the developers made the right choice. If the demo was still available, I would have by now played it for about 15 hours. And I would have had a lot less appetite to play the finished game. So I'm relieved in some ways.
You've been playing something else, haven't you, Graham?
Yes, I've been playing City Guesser, which is a simple browser game, simplish, in which you choose a region of the world, or indeed the entire world, and then are shown a video of a pedestrian, or filmed by a pedestrian, walking through a city somewhere in the world, and you must try to guess where in the world you are by placing a pin on a Google map. If that sounds familiar, then it's because it's almost exactly the concept of another game called GeoGuessr, which has been around for years and years and years. But GeoGuessr, it would drop you in like a street view, Google Maps street view view of somewhere in the world, and you would like kind of move around on the map. Whereas this is all video, and it's really lovely. Like, it's compulsive to me in the same way as GeoGuessr was. This is a game I can easily lose hours of my workday to in lieu of actually working, and CityGuessr has that. But these sorts of videos, like pedestrian videos of walking through city streets, are already something that I watch quite often on YouTube. And like when I first started watching them, maybe 5-6 years ago, I feel like there wasn't that many, and now there's just thousands of them. And most major cities in the world, you can find hundreds of videos of people walking through them, and they're great second screen viewing, very relaxing a lot of the time, and nice ways to see cities you've been to or will never go to. And CityGuessr is a great wrapper, basically, for dropping you into locations that maybe you might not think to look up. And there's something really like compelling about the way in which, and this is true of GeoGuessr as well, the way in which it forces you to look at the details in the video. Like, normally I would put a video like this on in a second screen, and I would be doing some work, and I would only be half paying attention to it. Whereas when I'm playing CityGuessr, I am studying every license plate, I'm studying every road sign, I'm trying to peer at the adverts in the windows of shops as the camera moves past them, trying to put together clues in order to work out where I am in the world. And Marsh, I think you said you'd been playing this as well, right?
Yeah. I've played an unhealthy amount of it last week or so. It's been great. I've been playing it with my partner as well, on Skype, because you can play it multiplayer. You can send a link out and invite them into your lobby, and then watch the video simultaneously.
Oh, nice.
And you can do it. I mean, it's set up to be competitive, so the first person, to guess. I can't quite work out how the points are calculated. It doesn't seem to be a huge advantage for getting in first, but you certainly get more points for being slightly closer to the mark. But to be honest, all of the sort of like potential competitive aspects of it and the sort of gamified aspects of it are just way secondary to me than what you're describing, which is just the sort of detective act of reading your environment for all the details and wishing you knew more flags than you do. Yeah, it's really good, and obviously right now it's there's just something incredibly pleasant about walking around a city, and being among people in places that you can't go to. I almost teared up while listening to a group of people talking about the trails they'd been on at Bryce Canyon that day. And I never previously thought that I would miss the inane wittering of my fellow man, but apparently I do. Although, actually, as sort of an aside there, there's no way that this thing is compliant with privacy laws. I mean, it's just like nobody's faces are censored. It's full audio. It's definitely haven't got consent. So yeah, it'll probably be shut down in a month or two. So
get on it while you can. I've also been playing it, and yeah, I love it. I also found it very addictive. Like, just as a game, I kept meaning to. I can't remember what it was I needed to do. Oh, I needed to work out, and I was delaying it. And I just wanted to check this thing out briefly, and I ended up, solving one, I guess you'd say. And then you have to sort of click a button to validate your guess. Am I right? And I was. And then, of course, it immediately loads you into a new one, and I just couldn't stop. I just kept on doing it. I've had a fairly good track record, except I don't know. Sometimes there's spoilers in the video. Basically, like my first one was just completely revealed to me to the absolute pinpoint location quite early on, and I see that one as a failure on my part, because I didn't even get the country, and it should have been obvious in retrospect. So it starts. The first thing you see is a pub, and I can't remember the name, but let's say it's like the Royal Arms or something. And I'm immediately thinking UK, obviously, and I'm specifically thinking UK, not America, because if it was in America, it would say like English pub, the Royal Arms, or whatever. Like, there's always some, clarification that this is British or whatever. And but it's very, very sunny, and that was slightly suspicious to me. Like, this is awfully sunny for Britain. It's rare to have a day this nice. And then I was seeing lots of English text and stuff, but then cars go by and the license plates are white, I think. Like, it's a bit far away to say for sure, but it didn't look like a yellow license plate. And I thought, that can't be UK then. So, like, English language with English culture, but not UK. And I started to think, like, is it Ireland or something? And then it walks up to a botanical garden. There's a sign on the botanical garden saying, Adelaide, Botanical Gardens. Like, well, I know exactly where this is. But immediately I was like, oh my God, Australia, of course. Like, British culture without any kind of caveats. It's not like, oh, look, quirky Britain. It's just, wholesale there and sort of feels local. But wrong license plates and super good weather. Of course it was Australia.
I'm sure our Australian listeners will love that characterization of Australia. It's British culture, but with the wrong license plates, basically.
Well, see, I had a very similar experience. Like, I think it's making me deeply fond of Australia and New Zealand because I had one where it was in a high street in a major city with lots of skyscrapers. And all the brands on the shops were like big chain, global and American stores. And there was like hip hop music and a guy in the street. The streets was almost deserted, but there was a guy really loudly rapping along to some American hip hop song. And then there were palm trees down the side of the street, and it was really sunny. And so, I'm pretty convinced at this point that it was the west coast of America somewhere. And then there's all the writing in the stores is English. There's a guy up ahead. He's talking on the phone. He walks past. He's speaking Spanish. So I'm thinking maybe it's California or something like that. And it was. I eventually got it right, but it was Auckland, New Zealand. And like that puzzling out that it was Auckland, New Zealand was like a super satisfying bit of investigation work to get to that point. And you can kind of choose between like hard mode and easy mode, I think, with the regions you pick. Like, if you just choose America and it will just give you cities within the United States, then a lot of the time it's going to be pretty easy. And I have had you dropped into a point in New York next to a road sign and an NYPD police car shoots by, and you're like, okay, well, I know where I am. All right, I had one, I usually play in worldwide, so just anywhere in the world, and I had one where the first frame of the picture was the Tottenham Court Road tube station sign in London or something like that, and it was just like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't so hard. Hard mode is Russia, I think, because the country is just utterly vast. I can't read the writing, and it has a lot of different cities, and so like I can go, okay, I'm in Russia somewhere, but if I choose the incorrect city, I might be 3,000 miles away from where I should be because just that country is so vast.
Yeah. I wish there was some kind of like helper functions a little bit on the map, where one thing I always want to know is like, because so far for me at least, they've all been cities. Is there, in fact, it's called City Getter, isn't it? So probably that's a rule. What I want to know is, as I'm looking at the map, just tell me yes or no. Am I at a zoom level where this city is actually marked? Like, have I zoomed in? Am I too zoomed out for this to even be shown, or am I at the right level? Because I was trying to look for one in Indonesia, and I was so sure it was Indonesia. And I knew the name of the city because I'd seen it in enough different places that I was like, this is definitely what the city is called. But Indonesia is big, and it's also very split up. It's on different islands. And I was just scouring it for ages trying to find the city, and there was nothing else. I got that it was in Java, but I actually didn't really know where Java was within Indonesia, so I also couldn't find Java. And Java's not like it's not a country and it's not a city, and so Google Maps doesn't sort of highlight it at the zoom levels that I was looking at. You have to really zoom in to like find that part, and so I could do with some help on that side of things.
Yeah, I think all my complaints about it are actually just complaints with Google Maps API. I think Google Maps has just generally got less usable fairly recently, particularly with the way what detail of the environment it decides to surface at different zoom levels. Because you can often see something at a zoom level, zoom in, and it disappears, and then you zoom in a bit further, and maybe it reappears, but maybe it doesn't. And it's a particular problem with this where sometimes you can know exactly which street you're on, even in which city, in which country, but you have to zoom in to them unless it's a famous street with a famous landmark. Then you have to pore over a map of quite large cities, like at a zoom level where you're seeing 0.5% of the city at a time. And I don't really know that that's a particularly satisfying way of solving the problem. Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to turn off items in the legend, so you can just display churches, for example, or things of that kind.
Yeah. I wonder if there's like a search nearby function on Google, isn't there? I wonder if you could be allowed to do that, but only with generic nouns or something, just certain options like that.
It's really interesting to me how different the different videos are in terms of presenting a sort of game-like challenge, because there's a real art to constructing something where it preserves a level of mystery and feeds you details quite slowly. Because sometimes you'll just be plonked down next to the Arc de Triomphe, and you'll be like, "Oh well, there's no game here." And then other times it can feel too obscure, and then sometimes it hits a sweet spot where you like the Auckland scenario you outlined, where you're sort of sure about the culture, but not quite some of the details start to throw you about where you particularly are. That's the sort of the point where it becomes like really a tantalizing mystery. I assume they are players just user submitted videos. I don't really know.
I think it's literally just YouTube videos. I think it's just pulling in YouTube videos and masking the YouTube player in some way.
Oh.
I reckon you could find these exact videos on YouTube if you just, typed in the city name and the word walking or something like that. I bet you would find some of these.
Do you guys cheat at all? Do you have recourse to Google when you do this, or are you purists?
I'm mostly a purist, but the one time, and I consider this a failure, the Indonesia one, because I was having such a hard time locating the city, even though I knew what the name of the city was, while I was looking for it, I also couldn't find Bali, and I've been to Bali, and I was like, this is ridiculous. If I can't find Bali within Indonesia, something's gone badly wrong. And so I cheated for that. I looked up where Bali is, and the problem was that there was a big word on the map that concealed the separation between Bali and I think it is Java, the landmass to the west of it. And so it looked like it was part of the same landmass, and I was looking for an island, and so I couldn't find an island that matched it. But yeah, that was the thing where I had to give up on that part. But then I did find the city after that.
I'm a purist. I've not Googled anything. If I get to the point where I'm, getting slightly frustrated by something, or I'm tempted to Google, then I am more likely to just fucking guess with my best guess and just accept if I end up being 6,000 miles away from where I should be.
I sometimes use Google Maps in another window. In no great, not with using the search function, just zooming in and out, because the modal window that it pops up in City Guesser is so small and it obscures the video while you're doing it. You can perform the same function in another window. On another screen. Then I don't feel that's too cheaty.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, because you can rewind and restart the video. So, obscuring the video doesn't feel like a part of the challenge where you're looking at the map, because you can just, then minimize the map again and rewind it 5 seconds. So having a map on a second screen seems reasonable. It's a lovely thing, though. I'm probably going to, after we're done recording this podcast, go play it for 2 more hours.
Have you discovered anywhere you're now planning to visit as a result?
No, I plan on visiting outside of my house eventually. That's
a bold goal.
That's it.
Tom Senior.
Hello.
Have you any other extraneous thoughts or feelings about games recently?
Well, I feel like I've missed out on this lovely kind of tourist experience, so I think I'm going to sign up for this and play it tomorrow. And I guess hearing you guys discuss this stuff, it really, really makes me want to play Flight Simulator.
Oh yeah.
So
it's got an update recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, apparently it's Wales exists now or something. I can't remember. Adds a lot of territories close to us that I would enjoy kind of just surfing over and seeing the landscape. Maybe, and that could be like a sort of high fidelity Google Maps for me these days, and something I could do with I don't know, like a nature documentary on the other screen. So it could be like, say, flying over Wales, seeing the beautiful valleys, and then be a whale on the other screen. And I feel like that'd be like a really good experience actually. But in terms of just like pure eye candy, I've been really enjoying Ori and the Will of the Wisps recently, which is a kind of Metroidvania platformer thing, with absolutely sublime movement, the speed of the character, the feeling of dashing, double jumping, mantling, climbing stuff. It's just immediately satisfying, and even though like it does take a little bit of time to unlock some basic traversal abilities, it doesn't fall into the trap of Hollow Knight, which is itself a brilliant game, but I feel like it holds back the upgrades that make it fun to actually jump around the place moment to moment. Whereas that's right in place at the start of Ori and Will of the Wisps. It's the sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest. And I would recommend skipping the first game and going straight to the second one, simply because it fixes loads of stuff about the save system and the movement. And it's just much better pace and more interesting to explore. And it's absolutely just gorgeous. Every single screen you're on is just unbelievably beautiful. The lighting, the way that the lighting interacts with the 2D art and the parallax background is just sensational. The way that like characters can emerge from the background and become suddenly a boss monster or helpful characters. It's just endlessly joyous. And I've taken, I'm going to complete it. I'd already complete these games, but this one I'm going to do, definitely.
Oh, wow.
Don't be too hasty in saying that.
Okay.
I also really like this game, and it's gorgeous, and I enjoyed the combat and everything, and I loved most of it, but I didn't finish it. I got all the way to the last like bit of it, the final boss. Maybe not the final boss. I think this is sort of a pre-final boss, and that segment was too frustrating. Have you had many of the like chase segments yet, where like a big thing is chasing you and the level's kind of falling apart?
Yeah, those are kind of bullshit.
Yeah, there's one of those that's especially difficult, and every time you die and have to go back a bit and replay. Well, in fact, this one I reset all the way back to the start of the whole thing. It's just really dispiriting, and it's just too difficult for me. I just was going to be repeating it so many times.
The one I was just stuck on, actually, I did actually look up a YouTube video for how to do it, and where I was going wrong was that like I just didn't understand that there's a big monster creature in the background that's kind of pursuing you, and you have to sort of like stealthily dart between safe zones.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to discern where the safe zones are.
Yep.
Based on the fact that like you exist on one 2D plane, and the monster exists on a separate 2D plane behind that. But the art is actually, this is where the art gets in the way of actually knowing what is blocking line sight and what isn't. So there's like a flimsy bit of cloth that hides you. I'm like, well, I would never have known that.
Yeah, I had that exact same problem.
Yeah, is that the precise bit? And also right after that bit, so it's taught you, okay, so you have to dart between safe zones. But then right after that, it's just a big race where you just have to go as fast as you can in full view of the monster. It's like, I mean, you taught me one thing, now I have to do another thing, and the only way I could figure that out was just doing it over and over and over again, or looking at a YouTube video. So yeah, you're right. There are problems with those sections. I found them quite infrequent though. They look
Yeah, they are.
They look amazing, but like they are. Yeah, I agree with you. You know, they're not well put together in terms of.
I wish they were just easy. Like I don't mind if they're a little bit bullshit and contrived and out of whack with the rest of the game. But if they're easy, then that's fine. That can just be a nice little break from the platforming. But when you make them hard, I've got to really fucking engage with this really bullshit thing you made up.
There's one when you're in a falling water wheel and you have to zip between points, and that was really bad as well. Yeah, no, I'm angry at the game now. I'm never going to finish it.
Happy to oblige.
Maybe I'm thinking maybe I should reinstall it, because I played it for the first time last week, and I think I got to the first. I'm not even sure if you'd call it a boss, but it was like some big wolf thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a stick with fire on it, and I think it killed me like 4 or 5 times, and I couldn't work out what I was even supposed to do. Like the damage range on my fire stick seemed pretty close, but then if I got that close to it, then he would kill me in like 2 hits, and so I just died to it like 5 times and uninstalled the game. This was last week, and so, but Everyone I talk to just talks about how lovely and good this game is, bar a few sections. So
Yeah.
I should probably
I think
try
that
and
is.
persevere.
I think that's a chase sequence, isn't it? The wolf thing.
I don't think that particular bit is. You do have to do a chase sequence of the wolf, but Graham, unfortunately, that tactic was correct. You have to sort of just like dodge in,
Really?
hit him in the nose with a fire stick, and then dodge back. But the game hasn't given you the dodge yet, so you have to do it with desperate jumping.
It does. It is. You do lead into that section with a chase, so it's a very short chase of like 45 seconds or something like that.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're scrambling away from them. Whereas
it's the worst of the entire game in one sequence.
I have been playing Hollow Knight as well, though, whereas I've been really enjoying that right from the off, because I really like the combat and that your little sword is really satisfying. Bashing beetles for coins is really nice right from the off, even before you get all the double jump and the dash and that sort of stuff.
Really look forward to Silk Song, which is it a sequel or is it an expansion to?
I think it's a full sequel now. It started life as an expansion, but it's grown, they've said, to the point where it's a standalone game now.
Because you encounter that character in the first game and she's awesome. So like the idea, like very excited about that.
Shall we do questions from questions? Do we have questions from questions?
No.
Okay.
We don't have any questions.
Okay.
Maybe I have a question for you, though. When I was talking about the old sins, I was wondering if you guys had also had a favourite in-game item that you have coveted and possibly rotated enthusiastically.
I don't know if you would describe this as an item. Well, it's two things. So first of all, I really liked this is the only thing I liked about the Thief remake from like 2014. I don't know, 16. In that you could your little ratty hands, your little ratty thief hands could kind of lunge forward onto the world, and then you could feel around the edges of paintings looking for like hidden switches. And if you did that using a controller, it would like vibrate as you found the hidden switch. And it wasn't just paintings; it was other objects in the environment basically that you could paw around. That was always really satisfying. But the other one, I'm not sure if you call it an item, but there's a game coming out called High Fleet. Have either of you or any of you seen?
Oh yeah, it's got a very nice UI menu system.
Lovely UI. It's got a skeuomorphic UI. It's inspired by kind of military hardware. It's a kind of aerial dogfighting strategy game where it's kind of split between these. You're piloting in 2D these huge physicsy flying war machines as they fire missiles at other enormous war machines in the sky, and then the rest of the game is you in some sort of cockpit, or at the very least kind of pressed up against a little computer screen with all these lovely switches and knobs and dials around it that look sort of like you're looking at the dash of a tank or a submarine or something like that. And it's gorgeously presented, and I really love the kind of tactile feel of all its knobs and switches. I'm really looking forward to that. That's kind of an item, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of an item.
I mean, that's you appreciate it in the similar way that you would appreciate an item. The standalone aspect of the item is not the thing that is important in this.
I quite enjoyed in Ghost of Tsushima when you find things in Mongol camps. It unlocks a kind of log entry for them in your in the interface that is a kind of historical breakdown of what that item is and what its role was in Mongol society. And I enjoyed learning about all the ways that they ferment milk. So I'm going to go with a milk rack, a fermenting milk rack.
I've got a couple of ideas for this. Graham's mention of inventory systems gave me a sudden flashback to Tomb Raider 2's rotating inventory list of items, that then each item that comes into the center of your view itself rotates. And in a kind of era that's sort of breaking into 3D, and at least when I was playing games, that was sort of revelatory. I was like, oh my God, look at the detail. It looks absurd now, but it's still great. And also, like, you'd find a jade dragon and that would rotate, and that was sort of a gift in and of itself. I'd also praise like loads of 2D inventory art throughout, like Baldur's Gate, Pillars of Eternity 2, and specifically Bloodborne for its depictions of madman skulls, which come in varying degrees of intensity that become more ghostly and tentacled as you go through the game. Lovely.
Well, that was all the rotatable object nonsense we could fit into the podcast this week. If you'd like to send us a question, you can send a question to questions@crateandcrowbar.com, or you can tweet us at crateandcrowbar. You can watch and listen to this recording and others as videos on YouTube, and you can find other stuff by us there. The address for that is youtube.com/crateandcrowbar. You can back us on Patreon as well. If you go to patreon.com/crateandcrowbar, and you can be a part of our wonderful Discord community, the link for which is on our website, crateandcrowbar.com. That's it. I've been Marsh Davis.
I've been Tom Francis.
I've been Tom Senior.
Shit. I've been Graham Smith.
Thanks for listening, everybody.